Hello, one and all. Jasper here, joined as always with DJ Fella, as we tackle, so far, I think the best episode that House of the Dragon has came out with. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts.
I could be persuaded that it's the best episode.
Now, I may have a bias because I will say this is probably the most accurate episode. In that, the very least, there's not any big changes, and I think one of the reasons it's also my favorite episode is there's not one big scene that is just utter shit compared to all the other episodes, which have at least one that left a real bad taste in my mouth. This one, like episode 4, is clean in my eyes, but also I just found it more entertaining compared to episode 4.
There's definitely a couple scenes that I am real not a fan of, but they're fairly small with the caveat that one of the scenes is the final scene.
Yeah, okay, yeah. We'll get to that final scene. That is a bad scene in my eyes, but it's like you can ignore it if you know what I mean, right?
It depends on what they do with it in the future, because it kind of seems like it might be an important character moment for Alicent.
Yeah, you're right. But with that, before we get into that, we can jump into the episode fairly early on, as we learn that apparently Corlys was injured in a battle at the Stepstones, and thus his life is somewhat into question, and so the inheritance of Driftmark is brought up. And something that I found interesting is of course, Corlys' brother is going to make the claim with the whole situation going on. But something that I found off was that there's like no real mention of Laena's children inheriting Driftmark, despite, how things kind of played out in the previous episode.
What from the previous episode would make Laena's children potential heirs?
Well, remember, here's the weird thing. Rhaenys is talking to Corlys saying that Laena's children should be the ones to inherit. And they alone pretty much should remove Aemon's claim. Not Aemon, but Corlys' brother's claim. A daughter comes before an uncle.
Does a daughter? I mean, a daughter only becomes before an uncle since Viserys was king.
This is usually kind of like how the inheritance works. As far as I'm aware, children are prioritized over, siblings to the former ruler. I will say, though, that an uncle and daughter dynamic, there are instances of those just in general clashing due to the sexism around, but I do find it odd that there is no mention of their claim at all. It's like it doesn't exist.
So, are women being the head of households more common than women being queen of the kingdom?
Yes, immensely.
Oh, that's news to me. Because the way the show acts, I just kind of was under the impression that head of household was kind of the same traditions as becoming king.
Mm-hmm. I will say the kingship does seem to be predominantly male in its form of inheritance, because previously, Daemon was the one who was in line to inherit rather than Rhaenyra. So
right.
The Iron Throne, that is an entirely kind of male-centric situation, whereas lords, like high lordships and even lord paramounts, women can and have inherited.
That seems like something that could have been extremely relevant throughout the entire series for anyone to mention. Like, it lends a lot of credibility to Viserys' choice to make his daughter heir if he were to cite the fact that, women can inherit houses.
Mm-hmm.
But he never does.
Well,
no one ever does.
Well, yeah, but that's kind of the whole precarious situation, because Rhaenyra inheriting before Daemon isn't that crazy of a leap. What's the issue is when Aegon is born. He's the eldest son. he's the one who should probably be inheriting.
True. So then that would probably be the same for households as well.
Yeah.
Like if you have an older daughter, your oldest son would still inherit.
Yeah, and I think that it's because of the Dance of Dragons, it kind of sets the precedent that males only inherit the Iron Throne. Because I think there is one instance where a king dies, but he has no sons, and I think he had a daughter, but his brother inherits instead.
Yeah, because they were like, look at what fucking happened with Viserys, that dumbass.
Right. But it luckily didn't seem to trickle down and affect minor houses or major houses, because lordships and whatnot can still be inherited by women. Men are still more prominent. It's primogeniture. So long as there's a son, they're above the women. But uncles do not have a strongest claim of daughters. But it's not unheard of for uncles to kind of override the daughters, and vice versa.
Okay. This all makes sense to me.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's probably kind of my biggest critique of the episode as a whole, is it doesn't seem to acknowledge them as valid options. It instead, there's this little moment later where Rhaenyra believes that Rhaenys is going to put herself up as the inheritor, which she has the worst claim out of everyone.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. It seemed... I mean, yeah, there's no precedent for that, right? Of the wife taking control afterwards.
There are some situations, I believe, where the wife, or I should say the widow, whether it be male or female, has taken over lands, but that's usually in the case of there just not really being any other viable options. But more often than not, there is. Remember, how Daemon kind of was planning on inheriting Runestone after he killed his wife?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
But then that's Daemon's a man, and his wife was a woman.
Yeah, but he still was, passed over. He still didn't inherit it.
Oh.
The show doesn't ever bring it up again, but yeah, in the books, he does go to inherit, and the Lady Paramount of the Vale said, "Nah, bitch, get out of here. You're not welcome in the Vale."
I hate how much this show skips.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that they didn't even have to really bring up that whole situation of inheritance, especially if they're never going to touch on it again.
Right, that's kind of what I'm saying is like that was a throwaway line Daemon used to piss a guy off in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
That never really became relevant later. So, why are you going to throw these seeds out if you know you're never going to, harvest the plants?
Mm-hmm. But, getting back to the episode we're currently on, Vaemond Velaryon is saying that he's the one who should have a claim. And, if you ignore the fact that Corlys still has, the legitimate granddaughters, he's kind of right, considering that Lucerys, I still don't know which way you pronounce it, is legally, as far as everyone is aware, is the one who would inherit next.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's 100% in the right as far as, what's correct by Westerosi customs.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also 100% right in, what needs to happen in order for proper Valyrians to continue existing,
yeah.
I guess, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's the last real Valyrian, right?
Yeah. I mean, there may be some, distant cousins. In the show, we see a lot of, black people with the white hair, so I assume they all are kind of, of the same family, maybe distant cousins or along those lines, so... But it's...
Yeah,
but,
true.
They're extra, so they don't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
But he then brings up how the tides have turned in King's Landing, and pretty much it's the High Towers who are ruling because Viserys has become so infirmed at this point. And so now he thinks that he has the situation where his claim will be chosen over the others.
And he's not entirely wrong. He's got a decent point there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if there was ever a time to make his move, he picked the right time.
Indeed. But then we get to move on over to Dragonstone, and we see, and this is kind of going back to like a previous qualm we've had with the show, but we see Jacaerys learning High Valyrian from a maester. And must be a slow learner, or at least it still like kind of boggles my mind that he doesn't know High Valyrian yet. Oh, wait, I'm forgetting about how we see Daemon walk into the cave.
I think we're skipping a scene.
We are, but Daemon goes in, there's this big fleshy thing, he hits it with a hammer and pulls out an egg. So eggs are being laid.
3 eggs.
3 entire eggs.
And then he receives a letter from his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And then I... Continue?
Yeah, pretty much just kind of letting him know about the whole inheritance situation.
Yeah, and I gotta say, his daughter has some terrible handwriting. I was trying to copy down what the letter said, and it was rough.
That's just the ye old English writing.
Father, I write with news of Uncle... what's her uncle's name?
Vaemon?
Vaemon. Which I swear to God, I thought... When I first was looking at that, I thought for sure it said Driftwood. And I was trying to, like, figure out what that could possibly mean, Uncle Driftwood. But I guess it's not Driftwood. Who this moment rides for King's Landing. He plans to something, His Grace the King on matters of succession rights and the sanctity of blood. He wishes for the Driftwood, and then fucking Daemon's shoulder is in the way, so I couldn't read that part. To him, that is his by rights, and he is the only This is crazy because I didn't think this was a word. Unattainted. He says he's the only unattainted choice. Like, unattainted is a word?
It sounds like it could be.
Like, untainted, for sure, but unattainted. Like, there's an A in there.
I got unattended.
I mean, I Googled it. It's a word.
Hey, now our vocabulary has updated a bit.
Yeah, but, like, you're never going to get to use unattainted. When are you going to use that?
I'll find a way. I'll probably force it in one of my videos now.
And then we're on to Dragonstone after that.
Yeah, we see Rhaenyra walking in on Jacaerys learning High Valyrian, and I'm surprised that they're starting, like, assumedly recently, because he's terrible at it.
I mean, he's not terrible. He messes up a few words.
I don't know. All I know is, despite growing up in a non-bilingual family, I know a lot of bilingual people, and it's because they all started at that young age and were taught, and they speak just kind of back and forth, you know? It's like, you know, when I would visit some of my friends who speak Spanish and English, they would just, like, switch back and forth with their families, with family members, and speak both English and Spanish. So
yeah, it's definitely true that it would not be unreasonable for him to be completely bilingual by his age. Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, what is his age?
Judging by that, probably young adult at this point. Like,
right,
I know,
like late teens.
I'd bet so far as he's probably like almost 18 at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Because we've skipped at least 6 years since the last episode.
Mm-hmm. And he was 10 around then.
Yeah. So, 18-ish. I could see that.
Yeah.
Which, this is the first scene we get with Jace as he's going to be, I think, for the rest of the show.
Yes.
And it's kind of an interesting way to introduce his character, because he shows like a certain insecurity, I think, about being a bastard and his desperation to learn High Valyrian. and so he's trying to like hyper adhere to tradition and trying to be as close to a proper Targaryen prince
Valyrian.
as he can.
Yeah, I definitely get that aspect of it, and it's a very enjoyable development that we don't. That's what I kind of like a lot about the show, is that we are getting to know these characters better, because there's not a whole lot of development or deep dive into them in the books, so that's why I am happy that of this adaptation in some regards or another. Obviously, there's one or two things that are obviously just completely changed one way or another that couldn't possibly exist in the original, but overall, I do like how they're taking a lot of these characters.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, Daemon then approaches and shares the mail with Rhaenys. And I kind of like this little back and forth, getting back into the deep politics and kind of like figuring out everyone's motivation in one regard or another.
Yeah. And so Damon and Rhaenyra are talking, and they're basically making it painfully clear that their political position is like weak as hell.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're in a real shitty situation.
Yeah. And I gotta be honest, a part of me is kind of surprised of how much of like a supportive stepfather Daemon is. Like, I'm surprised that those three bastards aren't dead, and now only his kids are in line to inherit after Rhaenys.
That would solve a lot of fucking problems. Because one thing I've thought about a lot since Rhaenyra married Daemon is that if they had just gone about their romance earlier on differently, like if Daemon hadn't been such an idiot about trying to marry her, then things could have ended up so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he could have, seduced her and then had her approach her father and be like, I want to marry Daemon. Because her father had already promised her to let her marry who she wants. And Daemon is, a fairly reasonable option. And then she could have just had kids with Daemon and there wouldn't be this whole fucking bastard situation. God, Daemon's an idiot.
Also, probably would have helped better if she used Daemon to make the babies instead of Harwin Strong.
Well, I mean, Daemon wasn't around when she was making babies at first.
Oh, come on. I feel like she could snap her fingers and Daemon would fly over.
Having babies with Daemon wouldn't look any more like Laenor than Harwin's would.
It would be more believable, though, because then at least the kids might have the pale hair of the Valyrians. And so, like, then it's just the skin color that's an issue, not the skin color and the hair color.
Yeah, except for the hair color is not supposed to be a problem because the Queen Who Never Was is supposed to have brown hair.
Black, but, like, that just makes it, like, somewhat understandable. That's the whole kind of vagueness of the books. So, in this case, like, obviously the show, it's not vague. They're bastards. But the issue is that it seems really obvious that they're not legitimate due to the issue of the skin color and the hair color. If you at least remove the hair color, then it seems more reasonable that her and Laenor could have three fairly pale kids. He's quarter black, not half black or full black or anything along those lines, so... Or no, the kids are quarter black, my bad. So, it's a bit more believable in that regard.
I guess.
Enough about that, though. So they continue to kind of go back and forth about the situation, but they inevitably, of course, make the choice of having to fly to King's Landing in order to defend Lucerys' right to inherit.
Uh-huh.
Get a lot, if I remember correctly, just kind of a lot of kind of traveling. We get a wide shot of King's Landing.
Mm-hmm.
They are greeted by Castlewell, I believe.
Some nobody. Some nobody that no one cares about.
Man, you're going to be amazed at what Lord Caswell does in the future.
I might be. But right now, he's a nobody. They should have been getting greeted by the queen.
They should have. They definitely should have. And now I think the next scene is where Daemon and Rhaenyra visit Viserys, correct? Or am I remembering incorrectly?
Yeah, there's a brief scene where they comment on the decor changing.
Right, with more Sept and Faith of the Seven.
Yeah. I guess there's also a scene in the council.
Right. And they're pretty much, they themselves are kind of discussing the whole topic of Corlys inheriting. And you kind of see, like, some of them with their different ideas of the whole situation. Lannister seems to think, we shouldn't have a young child be in charge of one of the most powerful fleets in the Seven Kingdoms. The Maester seems to think that doesn't matter. The succession's kind of already written in stone on who should inherit. And all these kind of, like, different aspects. So you can kind of see each one, even though these aren't exactly the most prominent characters yet, some more so than others. It is kind of interesting to see where they kind of follow. Which ones are kind of greens and which ones are blacks.
Yeah, like that one dude basically borderline calls the kids bastards.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it seems like I don't know. I feel like the small council would be pretty green at this point.
Mm-hmm. Of course, the one black guy is, of course, Team Black.
Right. Oh, well. So is the Maester Team Black?
He's the one who, I think he's the only one who defends, I
think the finance guy is the one who defends. The, like, nerdy guy that they all make fun of.
Grandson Lucerys to succeed him. That's the Maester talking. So maybe it's both.
Yeah, so, okay, maybe there's two blacks on the council.
Alright. But still, the fact that, this one guy is speaking, I think it's Jasper. I honestly can't remember his name, but I think he's the Jasper guy. Who, just how much more kind of open they are with the children being bastards kind of just shows how much more control the Greens have due to Viserys' situation and health waning.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and then
no complaints from me so far.
We go to the king's room. Oh, wait, never mind. Alicent is getting talked to by the king's guard.
Yep.
He's telling her there's a situation with her son.
And this next whole situation is actually pretty controversial in the fandom right now.
Well, we don't go into that situation quite yet.
Nope.
This scene then cuts to the king's room.
Yep, and we see his big mass, and oh man, seeing like the cobwebs on his like sculpture. It's heartbreaking. I didn't notice the cobwebs first time, but oh man.
A little sad, a little melancholy.
Oh man. I was kind of like hoping Viserys would at least make it one more episode. I knew he had to die this season, but I thought like maybe he'd be able to reach to the last one. But nope. And he looks like shit.
Zombie king.
Yep, he's pretty much on his way to being a white. And, like, I go kind of back and forth on this scene. A part of me thinks it kind of goes on a little too long, but at the same time, just, like, sitting back and watching the kind of situation and how it plays out, I can't help but love it.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a slower scene. It doesn't hit you with as many important pieces of information or character development or anything like that as a lot of scenes do or should, but I think it's extremely important because this is Viserys' last episode that it lingers on him a lot and lets us kind of mourn him as the episode continues, you know?
Mm-hmm. And you have Daemon being very upfront about the entire situation, like, hey, we need you to get up and cement Lucerys' claim to Driftmark. And poor Viserys, he's so kind of like drugged out on milk of the poppy in the entire situation that he has troubles remembering his grandkids or even his brother and daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Daemon starts basically by telling him Corlys has been injured, and then at the end, he asks like, "What happened to Corlys?" So like clearly not following anything that's being said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's such a good actor.
That's the thing. I'm so happy, and I think it's Patty Constantine. I'm so glad that there are a lot of people, like, when the show first started, everyone was, like, sucking Matt Smith's dick for Daemon Targaryen, which, no qualm against that. Matt Smith is, of course, doing a great thing, but Patty was, like, so far one of my favorites, and it is nice that, especially with this being his final episode, I'm seeing, like, just a lot more kind of praise in general for the actor.
I mean, I don't know how you couldn't. Like, he has stolen the show for me so far. His character, I haven't always been a fan of how his character's been written, but he has portrayed that character wonderfully the entire time.
And even when he's all, like, sick, seeing him being greeted to, like, his two newest grandchildren. God.
And his reaction to hearing one of them's named after him, that's adorable. I love that.
That's a name fit for a king. But of course, the bitch had to name one of them Aegon, so now we have two Aegons.
I was wondering about that, yeah. Because why not? Why not make the names even more confusing? Although I assume these kids aren't going to be playing a huge role, considering they'll be, like, babies for the remainder of the show.
I mean, I could tell you, but that'd be spoilers.
I mean, so my basic understanding / assumption is that we're pretty much done with time skips, at least as big of ones as we've been having recently.
Yeah, we're not going to get any time skips like a decade.
Yeah. So, I don't expect current babies to be playing a role in the war to come.
Yeah, because the Dance of the Dragon itself was 2-3 years off the top of my head. Anyways, back to the episode at hand. Yeah, it's definitely just a much more slower scene, and gets his headache from the children's crying and takes some tea to help numb the pain.
Yeah, and you can tell Daemon's having his doubts about why he's being kept drugged up.
Yeah. And so obviously, of course, Daemon and the Blacks are going to think that the High Towers and whatnot are doing this on purpose, because they want Viserys kind of like out of the picture so they have more power and influence. But, I do think there is obviously some truth to that, but I do think it is reasonable for them to have Viserys be on like painkillers and milk of the poppy, because the man is clearly not in a good state right now.
Yeah, it's another one of those situations where, 6 in one, half a dozen in the other. Both sides are kind of partially true.
Yep. But with that, we then see Alicent speaking to one of the handmaidens to Aegon, and no point in beating around the bush, Aegon raped her.
Yes.
Now, this is controversial for some of the book readers, because, and I think, and this is something I kind of disagree with a lot of book readers, but they feel like the Greens are just the bad guys. They're in the show, they're just the bad guys. Like, if you're not Team Black, then there's no point. So it's like there's no, like, ambiguity or grayness between them, which is something I heavily disagree with. I think that the Greens in the show are actually more sympathetic and better than in the books.
So I have no clue how the Greens are, or the Blacks are in the books, obviously. But I would say the show 100% tries to lead you into rooting for the Blacks and against the Greens.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, if I was a lord in Westeros, I'd be the fuck both your parties party. But if I had to choose someone, like on a moral perspective, I'd go with the blacks. But I think a lot of that with this situation is just like our own modern moralities. Sexism is of course wrong, so due to that, we should root for the blacks. Due to the Greens just in a way inherently kind of suppressing someone for the sake of their gender.
Right.
With that said, though,
which I think the writers and especially like the score at times definitely pushes. So like the blacks are like the more progressive side, so they're the good side.
Mm-hmm. But with that said, I like in particular Alicent. Like, I can really understand and get behind her motivations. She's almost been, I'm not going to say brainwashed, because let's face it, it is like a very scary situation to be in, because Rhaenyra being the first queen and her biggest, opponent for her claim being Alicent's son, it can be dangerous, especially because it would be smart for Rhaenyra to kill those claimants.
No, I would say that morally, I'm kind of on the green side in a lot of ways. Like, I don't blame Rhaenyra for the situation she's in, not entirely, but Viserys clearly put the kingdom in a precarious position when he made Rhaenyra heir, and then chose to keep her as heir.
Mm-hmm.
And then she continued to make that position more and more dangerous when she didn't have legitimate children.
Yes, like, that's the whole thing. I think you can place most of the blame on the Civil War on Viserys, like, obviously. And that's kind of like, I won't say it's like a critique of the writing or whatever. I actually think it makes the whole situation more interesting. But Rhaenyra just constantly fucking up at almost every situation, making her weak claim even more precarious and weaker.
Yeah, and Alicent and Otto, I think they are, even though they're 100% acting in their own interests, I think they are also acting in the interest of the kingdom. I think if Alicent and Otto managed to get what they wanted this episode, the whole kingdom would have come out far better for it.
I mean, maybe. I'm not a huge fan of Aegon as king.
That's true. They do make Aegon a real prick.
He doesn't strike... But we're getting off topic here. We can, save this kind of discussion for another episode or stream, maybe. But, obviously, so we have the situation of Aegon, while he was drunk, forced himself upon one of his handmaidens. And I have to say, I was 100% sure that bitch was going to get killed.
I felt... Yeah, I definitely thought she was going to die as well.
I was, thinking, Alicent is about to, order the Kingsguard, gut her, or something. And then it skips over to where she brings out the tea. And I was like, that ain't tea, that's fucking poison. She's dead, I know it. And
I was waiting for, Larys to come out and be like, come with me, and, we'll handle this situation. And then she's never seen again. That was kind of what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm. And with that, I mean, it's a very disturbing scene. And you can see that Alicent just hates being there for a multitude of reasons. Because she's sympathetic to the girl, but it's her son who did it.
And while I think there's elements of that, I would also say that this scene shows the development of Alicent's manipulation abilities.
Mm-hmm.
In the last episode, she discovered within herself that she will do whatever it takes to win.
Mm-hmm.
And now we see her more consciously putting that into practice.
Yeah.
She's extremely emotionally manipulative of this girl in the way that she tries to comfort her, but also threaten her with hey, but other people might not believe you. I believe you. I'm on your side. But you gotta think other people might not be on your side.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta do what I want you to, and you gotta stay quiet.
But then she visits Aegon and gives him a proper scolding, though I don't think she goes far enough.
Yeah, but I would like to comment on the fact that we get to see Aegon's ass again.
At least he's not jerking off a window.
Yeah, but I'm just curious, like, we have seen Aegon's ass more than any other character in the show at this point, right? What's the show's obsession with this man's ass?
Maybe
it's not even like he's that caked up.
Maybe it's the ass that was promised.
The ass that the throne desires.
That is what decides the end of Dance of Dragons. But yeah,
she's pretty harsh on him. I mean, you say not harsh enough, and like obviously, rape is like one of the worst things you can do to a person. But also, I feel like this is Game of Thrones, and rape is like, not that big a deal. Like in universe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like, I understand why she's hard on him, and he deserves it. But also, like, you raised this piece of shit.
Right? There's definitely...
Like this episode makes Alicent seem like a terrible mother. Both of her kids are fucking dickheads.
I mean, as far as, yes, incredibly. Especially, just wait till later in the series. But...
Yeah.
But, I mean, Aemond doesn't seem that bad.
Aemond... doesn't seem that good either.
But then, Aegon gives this little speech. I try so hard, but it'll never be enough for you or father. And I'm kind of just thinking, you don't strike me as trying very hard.
Yeah, in my notes I wrote, laugh my ass off. Yeah, right. Just don't rape the servants. Not that hard.
Obviously, don't go out drinking. That's the thing. What the kind of controversy is that this is one kind of thing of depicting the Greens in the worst possible light, as well as them taking instances from the book and interpreting them in the worst possible light, just to kind of make the Greens bad. Which I don't know. This doesn't strike me as all that outlandish, because in the books, Aegon had fathered a handful of bastards. One from just buying a girl from Fleabot, the Silk Streets. I don't think it was slavery or anything like that, but it was a bidding for some girl's maidenhood. And he also did sleep with one of Alicent's handmaidens. So the guy is kind of like a Playboy sleaze artist.
Yeah, and then in the show they make that his entire character.
Yeah.
It is the only notable feature Aegon has.
Mm-hmm. I'd say, though, there is possibility of just more development in general once he becomes a little more prominent. He's been a baby for most of the series.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying there's not, but I will say he's pretty one-note character at this stage.
Indeed. Definitely not a fan of him. His brother's way better.
His brother is definitely better. Still a dick, but better.
All right, but then we're back to Rhaenyra and Daemon, who are talking about the situation revolving around the Viserys, but Alicent cuts it a little bit short. Going through the scene. They definitely have that moment where they kind of focus on Rhaenyra's scar on her arm when Alicent's talking about how good it is to see them back.
Oh, that's what that scene's focusing on. Mm-hmm. I thought it was her holding hands with Daemon.
Mm-hmm.
And she was shy about it or something. I thought it was weird.
So,
but focusing on her scar makes way more sense.
There you go. So embarrassing to hold hands with your husband.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was like, why would she pull her hand away from Daemon?
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
So we got, the more kind of back and forth as Damon and Rhaenyra are pretty obvious about their annoyance and how upset they are about the situation, whereas Alicent is trying to be prim and proper, but still has her own kind of like backhanded comments.
I will say it is immensely refreshing for Rhaenyra to have someone like in her corner for these debates, because Damon does not give a fuck and he goes in.
Mm-hmm.
Like having Damon just being blunt as hell, defending Rhaenyra and their position basically, real refreshing, like a drink of lemonade.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, as much as I love padding, I have to give credit for Matt Smith and Damon. Both are great.
Oh, speaking of, while we're talking about Damon, I meant to mention this earlier, but I forgot. Why has he not aged a goddamn day the entire show?
I mean, he's just a very youthful. He's like Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, he just doesn't. Like his brother has gone from being like middle-aged to ancient zombie man, and Damon has not aged a day,
despite being like only 3 years younger, I think.
I feel like this show could have put more of its time and effort towards having the actors and actresses age gradually before they swap characters, and then have, because like I feel like Otto looks older after the time skip.
Yeah, they just put a little, like, I don't know if it's natural or vice versa, but there's some gray in his hair now.
Yeah, they made his hair grayer. I think they might have even made it look a little thinner. Like, why couldn't they do something to make Damon look older? I mean, obviously you can't gray his hair. But I don't know.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that argument. What do I mean? I agree with it. There's, like, no understanding. I agree with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that big a deal, but it just kind of bugs me.
But, again, we kind of, like, have the whole situation between the two going back and forth. And I love, like, just Damon's entire, like, feeling about it. Like, he's just always sick at the bullshit that's coming out of Alicent's mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just has no patience for it. He's just going in.
Bringing up how the Targaryen heraldries and whatnot are replaced with symbols of the Seven. All that good stuff. But with that said, I don't think there's anything deeper that we need to go into. So I think we can jump to the next scene.
Yep, where the bastard kids are at the practice grounds.
Fond memories, of course, where their father beat the shit out of Kristen Cole. And we get to see the twin Kingsguard members in the back. Yep.
Which, who the fuck are they?
I'm drawing a blank on their name. They're actually, like, pretty cool, like, in the books. They have their own little moments, but they are probably fairly recent additions. They're actually two, obviously, twin brothers who... can't... Like, it's not a big spoiler or anything, but, you know, I'll let that play out instead. But they're going to have a very good moment.
And so did two Kingsguard that we never met die? And that's how those guys became Kingsguard?
I'm trying to think. I'd imagine, because that's the whole thing. Like, a lot of characters in the Kingsguard, like during Viserys' reign, kind of like died of old age just because it was peaceful. You know, no issues. Because like the first, like until Kristen Cole became Kingsmander, like that's the whole thing. All the Lord Commanders of the Kingsguard just died of old age.
Makes sense. But because we still have the same Lord's Commander of the Kingsguard since, like, what was it, episode 2 that he became the commander?
Yeah, so, and I think, two things. I've had this kind of inclination since he's still kicking, as well as him being played by a fairly prominent actor, but there has got to be, like, some sort of confrontation between him and Kristen, I think. And I think that Kristen might kill him.
I could see that being the case. He's another actor that I think has not aged.
Kristen? I mean, he got a haircut.
No, well, Kristen Kristen, they've done maybe a little bit. Like you said, they changed his hair, but he's so handsome, I don't care. But the Kingsguard commander, he is not aged.
Yeah,
like he was old to begin with, and he still looks like he's in his like mid-40s.
Yeah, I was going to argue with that a bit. It was like, once you get like that old, you don't like the change isn't going to be that different. But he should definitely not be as spry as he seems to be.
Yeah, like dude's got to be pushing 70 at this point in the show.
Somewhere along those lines, yeah. But back to the episode, we have, Jacaerys and Lucerys kind of reminiscing about the situation. Apparently Lucerys broke a piece of the wall wielding Kristen Cole's Morning Star.
Yeah, which I thought was odd, because wasn't he like 2 years old when they were at King's Landing?
No. He
wasn't actually 2 years old, but he was
young. He was probably
real little.
Probably like all the characters were aged up a bit, so I think he was probably 7 or 8.
Yeah, I don't think an 8-year-old could take a chunk out of a wall.
Probably not. Maybe
especially like they haven't shown the bastard kids to be particularly strong. Like they've kind of gotten their ass kicked in every fight.
Right? They definitely they seem to only get the worst traits from Harwin, none of the good ones.
Right? And so then we see Cole dueling with a fucking old ass man.
Right? Just some random old guy with an eye patch.
Yeah, who's this one-eyed old man?
Yeah, he definitely and it's even more of a very precarious situation considering his mom is played by a fairly young actress. It's just nah, that's not her son.
No, and he looks so much older than his older brother.
Mm-hmm.
How old is the actor, I wonder?
I'm actually pulling it up right now. Played by Ewan Mitchell. And Ewan Mitchell is... No fucking clue. He looks younger. It looks like they made him deliberately older in the show.
Yeah, his face is so well defined, all his face wrinkles, and he's got such gaunt features. His cheekbones are really prominent, and his cheeks are kind of sunken in. It just makes him look super old.
Oh, he was in The Last Kingdom. I wonder who he was.
He has a weird mouth as well.
DJ, you can't... Oh, he was that guy. Cool. Yeah, so he was in The Last Kingdom. He looked fairly young in The Last Kingdom. So it's they deliberately made him look older. I can't find, his actual age. But they definitely seem to go out of their way to make him look 30s.
He kind of purses his lips in a weird way when he talks.
Mm-hmm.
It almost looks like he's going to go in and try and kiss Cole. But he doesn't.
I will also say this. What they're I'm assuming that Aemond here is using a blunt sword, but Kristen is clearly using a flail that very well could accidentally kill someone easily.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't really... Blunting a flail doesn't really make it any worse.
So that...
It's still a giant heavy chunk of metal.
It's especially since it's designed to fuck up someone in armor, so the fact that he's not wearing any makes it even worse.
Oh, that's something I meant to mention 80 episodes ago, but I kept forgetting. Have you noticed that Cole is the only Kingsguard that's never wearing a helmet?
To be fair, he did wear a helmet when he was with Otto Hightower and they were confronting Daemon over the dragon egg.
Yes. And then he took it off and never put it back on again.
Yeah, and that's just a stupid Hollywood thing you have to accept, that actors aren't going to wear helmets. The only one, and God bless him, was Grey Worm in Game of Thrones. He was the only fucker to wear a helmet.
But it looks extra weird when, like, Cole's surrounded by other Kingsguard and they're all wearing helmets and Cole's just standing there with, like, his hair flowing.
Mm-hmm. But with that, right after the duel takes place, the brother, Vaemond Velaryon, makes his appearance, being escorted in by some high tower knights as well as his own Valyrian subjects.
Yeah, and he looks angry.
He's just glaring daggers at them bastards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then
he's a man on a mission.
Mm-hmm. And then we kind of get the whole kind of setting, the meeting between him and Alicent and Otto, and pretty much laying out like, yeah, if you name me as heir to Driftmark, I can be very, very dedicated to the Greens.
Yeah, he basically says, like, make me the new head of the house, and, you know, I'll help you in the civil war that's inevitably about to happen.
Mm-hmm. Which obviously would be a big play, though not as big as a lot of people say, because, like, he wouldn't really have any control of the dragons, but he would still control the largest fleet.
But I think the Queen Who Never Was would side with him at that point.
So you think if he was named, then she would just kind of, like, submit?
I don't know that submit's the right word, but she definitely seems to be willing to go where the favor is. Mm. And I think if she sees the favor that skewed, she would absolutely side with the Greens.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question would be whether her granddaughters, you'd assume her granddaughters would side with their father?
But
I don't know. That would be the one question, is she might go to the Black still because of her granddaughters, but she really doesn't like Rhaenyra and Daemon.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's more to this than just getting the Navy. I think there could be dragons on the line.
Mm-hmm. Speaking, however, though, we do get a scene where we have Rhaena, Rhaenys, and Bella? I think that's Bella. Might be the other one. I don't know. But, we have them kind of, like, meeting underneath the Godswood. And, of course, talking politics in the whole situation. And, like I said, Rhaenys kind of, like, brings up, like, you know, you came flying over here. Obviously, you're trying to put your own claim for the Driftwood throne. And I'm just like, why? Again, she's got... When we last saw her with Corlys, she wanted her granddaughters to inherit, not her. So it seems really weird that you would ever get the idea that she's trying to ask to make herself be next in line.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we never get confirmation that she was trying to take it for herself.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the only time that's mentioned is Rhaenyra saying that. But if she... Yeah, I feel like Rhaenyra should have assumed she was trying to get it for her granddaughter.
Mm-hmm.
Which wouldn't be a bad deal for Rhaenyra, now that I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's obviously not as ideal, but that's still her stepdaughter.
Yeah, it's still a dangerous thing, because if that were to happen, that casts more shadow on the bastardy.
That's true. That is the main issue, is that it makes her son look more like a bastard, even though he already looks 100% like a bastard.
Yeah, clearly.
But I would say, you know, if the options are get her stepdaughter on the throne or get Corlys' brother on the throne, stepdaughter's 100% better.
Mm-hmm. Definitely the way to go. But she does make, you know, a good option, you know. And I think this is a good one of the reasons why Rhaenys does decide in the end to support Lucerys, is because of the betrothal. Because technically, you know, by the end, that means that the Velaryon line will still continue. It will be Corlys' blood.
Yeah. But she doesn't accept it immediately.
No.
In this scene, I think it looked like she was going to... I mean, she basically does outright decline it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fair enough. At this point, in the episode, she should be declining it. The princess and Damon have no cards to play.
Mm-hmm.
This was clearly an act of desperation on the princess's part. So yeah, I would say smart move.
Especially because, she's keeping her cards close to her hand and waiting to see which way the wind blows. And a hurricane comes out of nowhere eventually.
Yeah.
All right. And then we get the scene where Rhaenyra visits Viserys again. And
yes, sir.
It's a painful thing to watch. Like, in a good way, I mean. Just like her, like in a way, like pleading with her father, like, I need your help right now. And he's just in that, mental weak state. And it seems like he's not going to be able to do anything. And it's really good. And she seems like to have like some real regret on her being named as the heir to the throne.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a part of her is like, we shouldn't have done this, but we're already in too deep, which I'm going to say not really. Feel like definitely you can put her back a little bit. Well, maybe not, because the hostility between the blacks and greens is pretty serious.
So she also asks him if he believes in the prophecy. She brings up the Song of Ice and Fire.
Mm-hmm.
Which seems weird. I think it's weird for her to bring that up now. Because first of all, I don't fucking like it. Because I don't like them mentioning the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy.
Because we know how it ends.
I know how it fucking ends, and it's retarded.
The realm was never united. It was quite fractured.
Yeah, it just... Why they keep pushing this prophecy. And unfortunately, in this episode, it becomes a fairly important plot point that she brought up the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy.
A very convenient plot point.
An extremely convenient plot point.
Yeah. Can we just ignore all that?
We can't. It's a part of the episode. I wish we could.
I legit have my fingers crossed that, because nobody's happy about the addition of the Song of the Ice and Fire prophecy in season 1 at all. So I'm just hoping that in the next season and future seasons, that's just cut completely out. It's just like, don't worry about it. Never coming up again. Please. Treat it like Jar Jar Binks. Just cut it off and forget about it.
You can only hope, but it's... They doubled down on it pretty hard this season.
Yeah, but that's because...
Obviously, it was before they got to see fan reactions, but you know what the fans' reaction to that's going to be.
Maybe they were stupidly optimistic?
I can't understand. Like, somebody who's writing this show has to know how bad Season 8 is. Everybody knows how bad Season 8 is.
Even the casuals hate Season 8.
Yeah. So don't bring up the prophecy. But continuing on. So yeah, then she goes on about how him naming her heir divided the realm and how that puts a lot of pressure on her. And I would just, again, like to point out, why can everybody see this except Viserys? Like, I get that he's supposed to be naive. I get that he's supposed to be a bad king. But this goddamn show makes him into a lobotomite. He's just, like, incapable of critical thinking.
Mm-hmm. He's just unable to see how deep the claws are in this whole situation. He just thinks, like, it's a little, like, family bickering.
I guess.
Yeah. But it's, like, it's almost to a point, though. We're kind of, like, at the point where I do think, like, there's not a whole lot Viserys could do.
It is. We are past the turning point.
Mm-hmm.
He should have done something much, much sooner.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say we are past... Although I will say, one thing he could have done in this episode that would have helped is nothing. he could have done nothing.
You-
If he'd let the Hightowers take this W, then the Civil War would have been far more one-sided, and you'd probably still have dragons.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, maybe, but who knows? I mean, I know the answer to that. It's a very interesting situation, but I feel like we can talk that more in private once the season's over.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm. With that, though, the next scene we get is where Viserys is being treated, and he seems to be much more mentally cognitive. I'm guessing that's just because, the medication he's on is wearing off.
Mm-hmm.
And he just wants his family to have supper. Just wants the whole family together to eat a nice meal. This poor, broken, dead man.
Just wants to eat one last dinner with his family.
Otto comes in and offers him, I assume, milk of the poppy. And Viserys is none of that shit. I need to be able to be cognitive. The pain's worth it in order to have that moment with my family and be able to remember it and be there for it, actually.
Yeah. I also think that part of him remembers Daemon and Rhaenyra's pleading.
Mm-hmm. I definitely... I think that's a fair assessment as well. But then we get... It's not really a trial, but the hearing for the right to own Driftmark.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so the first one to speak is, of course, Vaemond Velaryon, who makes a pretty good case. I mean, it's kind of...
Yeah.
It's pointless due to the daughters existing, but uncles trying to overstep those kinds of situations aren't unheard of.
Yeah, and he's, for the most part, in the right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the thing. I disagree with that, because no matter how you look at it, the daughter... even if you believe that... obviously they're bastards, but even in this world, if you believe that the kids are bastards, then obviously the daughters should inherit before him.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Because his whole argument is they're bastards and a Velaryon needs to be inherit Driftmark so the bloodline continues. They're Velaryons.
But that reality has not been presented in the show at all. So I'm assuming it's not an option for some reason, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I will say something that might be a key point is that their last names, the daughters, are actually Targaryen, because their father is Daemon Targaryen. So they're actually they're not Velaryons in name. So then inheriting might remove the Velaryon name.
That's true. Well, them inheriting either way would likely remove the Velaryon name, because once they marry, they're going to take on the husband's name.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they also decide to go by Viserys' newly established roles for Princess Rhaenyra.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think back. I believe there are matrilineal marriages. I know for a fact they are in Dorne, but Dorne's super progressive for women's rights and whatnot. But I believe that there might be matrilineal marriages, but I'm not 100% sure. You know what? Maybe there isn't, because I remember Brienne of Tarth. She's the only child, so she's going to be inheriting her father's seat. And all the marriages for her, I think, were with other lords and whatnot who were set to inherit in one regard or another. So the Tarth name was going to go extinct after her, I guess. Huh? So, anyways.
So he might have an argument on the topic of keeping the Valyrian name, but not so much on keeping Valyrian blood.
Well, he's both. He's both, because he's got the name and the blood, whereas the daughters just have the blood and the bastards just have the name.
Yeah. Ooh, that's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I still think it's weird that the daughters are never brought up, but I'm sounding like a broken record at this point. So he makes his plea, and Rhaenyra, like, interjects, and Alicent's like, hey, shut the fuck up, bitch. You'll have your turn.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually surprised, because, I'll be honest, I knew Viserys was going to show up. Like, that's really the only situation... Granted, I know how the books play out, so maybe that's a part of it as well. So I knew that Viserys, like, had to make an appearance in order to, like, sway the way the wind's blowing. But I thought we would get a bit more of the hearing than we got. I thought we would hear, like, all three make their plea, and then Viserys would show in.
Yeah, but I think Vaemon getting his plea is kind of the only one we needed before Viserys shows up.
Mm-hmm. But I think with that said, we obviously need to jump to that big moment where Viserys makes his appearance and we get the dark, triumphant music.
And this music right here would be one of my primary arguments for why the show is trying to make us root for Team Black.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is obviously a huge moment in favor of Team Black, and the music is like, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened.
I think there is...
It's a fantastic score, though.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
I would argue that because it's a bit more of a lower and darker theme, that one could interpret it as almost like seeing the bad guy get his own kind of like victory music. I'm not like, or the situation. I do mostly agree though that it's mostly in favor of the blacks, but it could also be, one could interpret it as just a triumphant music to see Viserys in this state going through this in order to protect his daughter and grandkids. It's not so much as portraying the blacks, but portraying Viserys in the triumphant light.
Maybe so. There's probably elements of all of it.
Yeah, but that's what's kind of like the great thing about this show, you know? The different ways you can like look in and interpret these things. You know?
Yeah.
And then he's walking, and he's walking, and he's walking, and I do definitely enjoy how long they stick with Viserys in order for him to just like get up onto the Iron Throne. It just, you know, it really beats in just like how decrepit he is at this point in his life.
And how stubborn he is. It's like he turns back the Kingsguard when he comes to help. And he drops his crown. And then Daemon comes to help. And he accepts Daemon's help.
There's such a confusing relationship between these two.
Yeah. But this final moment between the two really establishes that there always was love between them, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you don't banish someone 4 times if you don't love them, right?
Right. You banish someone once if you don't love them.
And then he places the crown on his head, and like it says, I think it shows that Daemon is an ambitious person, but his ambition didn't go to such an extent where he was willing to kill his brother in order to get the throne, or any of that regard, despite everyone thinking quite badly of him.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever it was first brought up in episode, was it 1 or 2? I 100% believed back then that Daemon would kill his brother, but at this point, I don't.
Mm-hmm. And so
I think he would kill pretty much anyone else.
Oh yeah, anyone else. Like with that. So I think that's the whole thing, you know. Well, then again, he's related to the kids on the other side, but like more close related family. Stepkids are okay in his eyes. I guess he won't kill them for his sake.
Yeah.
Or who knows? Who knows what the show might do with him? He didn't kill his wife in the book, so
Right? He's a loose cannon.
Mm-hmm. And so Viserys pretty much says, like, why the fuck are we doing this? She obviously knows what Corlys wants. And she just walks up and says, yeah, Corlys wanted Lucerys. And like I said, I thought this was going to be the big twist. I thought she was going to say, like, speak on behalf of her daughters to inherit Driftmark. But I think, and one can interpret this the whole situation, once Viserys got into the room, she kind of realized it would be a bad idea to say that her daughters should inherit over Lucerys. And so then, she kind of goes back on the previous whole situation and announces the marriage. So that way Rhaenyra can't exactly pull back.
Yeah, she's put into a corner where she basically has to side with Rhaenyra, and so she's also going to make sure that she gets hers at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a nice little switch. So that point gets a lot better on, a repeat watch, whereas the first time I saw it, I was like a little iffy, but overall, I think it's good.
Which I love the faces of Alicent, Otto, and Vaemond in this scene. They're just like looking at each other, like back and forth, just with fucking like, fuck. Oh, it's so good.
It's like, God damn it, we didn't count for this.
Yeah. Yeah, like so close, yet so far.
Yeah. Vaemond, like, doesn't even look like fuck. He's just unbridled rage.
Oh, yeah.
And it clearly boils over to a point where he makes a very big mistake.
Yeah.
He pretty much calls the king out. You've broken years and years of tradition in your own house, but you have no right to do the same to my own family.
Mm-hmm. And that's not where he stops.
No. He just keeps going. And I think that it's at this moment that makes me think, like, of course there's always going to be a level of ambition that motivates these actions, but I think if this was just purely ambition, he wouldn't have had this outburst. I think there is a strong want for the name and blood of House Velaryon to continue.
Yeah, I would say that he was probably the most honest about his motivations the entire time.
Mm-hmm. And he just lays it all out. And we at this point know he's going to die.
Yeah.
He's not getting out of this alive.
Yeah. But when he goes and he says, "And gods be damned, I will not see it ended on account of this."
And Damon's like, say it.
Yeah, and Damon's begging for it. Begging for it. Which I find it funny that he says, "I will not see it ended on account of this." And then and then he basically ends it right after that.
Yeah, I think there's also like just a general acceptance of this. I think he knows he's going to die.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see it in his face.
Like, he's smiling when he's saying, bastards.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just going to stick it to him. And then he goes in even harder and calls her a whore.
He's going to make sure that this black victory is brought down as low as it possibly can be.
Uh-huh.
And Viserys draws his dagger and says, "I'll have your tongue." But Daemon becomes a kill-stealing fucktard.
I don't think Viserys was ever getting that kill. Which, I love the line, he can keep his tongue, but like, there's no way you're standing behind someone swinging a sword, and you're hitting them in the perfect part of their head to cut off all of their head except for their tongue.
Yeah. But
that's a cool moment.
Yeah.
This is one where I'm willing to take rule of cool.
Yeah. And right after that, when, Otto says disarm him, and he's like, no need, and just walks away, we see Aemond I swear, giving Daemon fuck me eye.
Yeah, Aemon. We see it some more even in the later scenes.
Mm-hmm.
I think Aemon has a lot of respect for Daemon as a warrior and kind of wants to fight him. I think that's what these fuck me eyes are.
Oh, clearly. Aemon has a... Like, I wouldn't even call it begrudging, but, like, just a respect for the capabilities of Daemon. Because Daemon is, like, a great warrior in his own right. And a dragon, right? Like, Daemon is, like, the tough... Like, one of the most dangerous person alive. And there's this joy, especially with Aemon riding Vhagar, to overtake him. Now he's the toughest and most dangerous person alive.
Well, except for Daemon got his cheeks clapped by Cole in episode 1.
And then, so Viserys is kind of like, I don't know if it's like a heart attack, but obviously his illness is kind of like getting the best of him now as he's helped out of the whole situation. And
yeah, I think like the adrenaline kind of wore off, and he's like, "Oh fuck, I'm in immense pain. I forgot.
I'm dying." And then we jump over to them preparing Vaemon's body.
Mm-hmm.
And just to be clear, since since I'm not going to be releasing a video that talks about the changes that this episode does, because there's like so few, Vaemond here was actually fed to a dragon.
Like after he was killed?
Yeah. Like when he called Rhaenyra's children bastards, Rhaenyra ordered Daemon to kill him, and Daemon did, and they just fed him to they cut off his head and fed him to her dragon. So there was no body to prepare.
Yeah.
There were also a bunch of other guys who made their claim after Vaemond was killed, and Viserys listened to every single one of them, and then just at the end of it, cut all their tongues out.
Nice. So I guess Viserys wasn't quite as on death's door in the books at this point.
Nah, that's the whole thing. Viserys, he was never this sickly and dying. He was overweight and whatnot, and not very healthy. But there was no sense of him being a zombie or just this close to death.
Oh. So what does he die of in the books?
I'm not just an unhealthy lifestyle, He was they definitely seem to focus on him being overweight in the books, and he would be become red-faced and out of breath in situations. So I interpreted it definitely as just him not being the healthiest of individuals because of life choices.
Yeah, I would say that what the show went with is a little more cinematic.
Oh, immensely. It's it's a change that I don't have much issue with. But I will say that this whole scene with the Silent Sisters taking care of Vaemond Valerion doesn't strike me as the most prominent.
The most prominent scene?
Not a very important one. I don't think we get a whole lot out of it.
No, I took 0 notes on that scene. I thought it was a little weird that Rhaenys? Is that the
Rhaenys.
queen who never went? I found it a little weird that she was standing there watching them prepare his body, because I didn't really think she cared about Vaemond that much, but
yeah.
Other than that.
Uh-huh.
And then we're on to dinner.
And we're finally getting this wonderful supper. Yeah. So this pretty much made it... This whole kind of scene just made Aegon an unbearable twat.
Oh, yeah. Aegon... that's a little later in the scene. But, yeah, Aegon does become a real piece of shit in this scene.
Just
Not that he wasn't a real piece of shit before this scene.
Right. But it's just hammering that in.
Yeah.
It's gonna... I'm going to be interested if they're going to make any sort of attempt to make him likable. Because there was a good way to make him likable, as he never really wanted the throne. It was just kind of forced upon him, and the only reason he kind of accepted it was when Alicent kind of railed it into his mind, if he doesn't, then his siblings and his children would be put to death by Rhaenyra. So there's a real sympathetic avenue they could have gone with him, and it is a shame that they made him so far, I would say, the most hateable of the Greens.
Yeah, I would say he's the most hateable of the Greens. So the king sits down and they start praying.
Mm-hmm.
And Alicent prays for Vaemond. And Daemon has the fucking funniest look on his face when Alicent prays for Vaemond.
Just rolling his eyes and like, yeah, sure.
Rolls his eyes and like looks up at the sky like, Jesus Christ.
And so I think this is also kind of like the longest scene in the show so far. Like, this is the longest we've kind of been in one location for an entire time.
Really?
I want to say, I don't think there's been any other scene in the show that's focused on a set of characters in one place for this long.
You might be right. The scene's pretty long.
The only one that might come close was like the previous episode where everyone was talking about the whole situation with the kids after, Aemond lost his eye. That might be longer, but I'm not 100% sure.
If I was going to go for a scene from last episode, I would say the like wake after the funeral. I felt like that took a while.
Yeah, you might be right about that now that I realize. So, I'm going to retract that statement then. Alright, so, and then after the whole prayer, Aegon is a jerk. And a childish one at that.
Mm-hmm. Just, like, completely unlikable.
A douche. An incredible douche.
Yeah, they if they are planning on giving him redeeming qualities in the future, like, I almost feel like it's too little too late.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. It's like, not quite to that level, but it's like trying to make Joffrey or Ramsay likable later.
Yeah.
It's Diet Joffrey.
It is. It really is Diet Joffrey.
Mm-hmm. But then Viserys gets up, and he gives, like, probably one of the saddest speeches I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yes. It's a sad speech.
Just, you hear the desperation as he loves everyone at the table, and he wants them all to love each other and get along, and he removes his mask, and motherfucker, how are you alive?
Yeah. I didn't know you could live, like, no eyeballs one thing, but, like, that's a crater in his face. Like, and then on top of that, his cheek is gone. So, like, how does he eat?
He just keeps it, like, on the other side.
Yeah, he just chews with one half of his mouth.
But...
That shit looks like it would get infected so easy.
That's what the mask is for.
I guess. But goddamn.
Man. And what I do kind of like about this is it does seem like it works somewhat. Like, it obviously doesn't work on everyone, but it works somewhat. Like, at the very least, I feel like everyone feels guilty about the whole situation.
Yeah. He does make everyone feel guilty.
It's like, in particular, Alicent. Like, she definitely has the, like, kind of the sad face looking down constantly.
Yeah. Alicent and... I would say Daemon is the other one that, like, when I see his face, it looks like he's kind of reflecting on his actions.
Mm-hmm. Though Daemon's just a bit more kind of cold-faced about the whole situation, whereas Alicent's a bit more emotional.
Yeah. And then, like, all the kids are just kind of awkward. They're like, I didn't choose any of this.
You don't expect me to like Aegon, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, though, a part of me feels like, when Rhaenyra gets up and, like, makes her toast, a part of me is like, she wants to take advantage of Alicent's more emotional state. Because Rhaenyra was pretty stone-faced throughout the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think she's being more tactical in this situation. And she's, like, prying on it to try and, like, build that bridge. I don't know how genuine she is about it. I'd imagine, like, fairly genuine. But, like, it feels like a definitely more politically motivated rather than emotionally motivated.
Yeah. I could see that. And I guess my question would be, what could she gain from... Because the bridge can't be rebuilt. Like, there is no building that bridge up again at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I guess she makes Alicent feel slightly more guilty for what she does.
Mm-hmm. I think what she's trying to do, I think there is... Like you said, there's no way that the bridge can be built. I feel like if Alicent and Rhaenyra are the ones to build that bridge, there is a chance that the dance doesn't happen. I think it would, or at the very least, delayed immensely. Because I don't know how far her kids would be able to get without even their own mother's support in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess Rhaenyra and Alicent working together could stop. You'd still have some serious concerns about a civil war, if not with dragons involved, just from having Rhaenyra with obvious bastards sitting on the throne.
Mm-hmm. Like, that's the thing. You could definitely, like, push the Dance of the Dragons down a generation. Like, if, like, let's say Alicent and Rhaenyra make up, and then, you know, Alicent and Rhaenyra die later, or Rhaenyra dies, I should say, then when Jaehaerys sits the Iron Throne, there's obviously going to be questions about his bastardy. And not just the Greens, but also maybe his own younger brothers, that Daemon's kids. You can have a whole different dance going on in that situation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but with all that squared away, Aegon continues to be a prat.
Oh yeah, this one's worse though. This one's like, seriously, dude, what are you doing?
It's just embarrassing.
Yeah.
And Jaehaerys, of course, is getting upset, but he keeps his cool and he acts like an adult, unlike Aegon. He kind of, like, has a bit of a shared glance with Aemond. But eventually he also makes a toast. And this is kind of like, you know, starting the whole trend where everyone starts toasting each other.
I mean, I would say that Rhaenyra started the trend of toasting each other.
Yeah, but this is...
I think he just makes the toast to cover up his outburst.
Mm-hmm. But this is starting, like, you know, the rule of three. Once the third one comes, now we understand that everyone has to kind of make a toast.
Except for only one more person makes a toast.
Yeah, and it's the best toast ever.
That's debatable.
I'm really annoyed by my recording because my skip options are 30 seconds.
Ooh, that's a big chunk.
That's too far. Well, wait, no, we forgot. Helena makes a toast.
Oh, she does. And that's the best toast ever.
I take back everything I say. It is hers. And
yeah.
I'm really happy. She seems less quirky now. Like, she seems like an actual person now.
She does drop, like, a weird line, I thought, in the middle of the dinner at one point, doesn't she? Like, it doesn't linger on it or anything. She just says something weird about, like, under the floorboards.
Yeah. What I find kind of weird, though, is after her little speech, Otto Hightower, like, whispers, good. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. I was like, what was good about that speech?
She literally talked about how your grandson pays no mind to her. Maybe it's just because it was a fairly humorous situation, but I don't know. It's weird that Otto would be like, good.
Yeah, I guess maybe it could be looked at as her kind of removing the tension from the air.
Yeah. But this whole situation doesn't help as music starts to play, and Jacaerys asks Helena to dance with him. And I gotta say, what the fuck kind of dance are they doing? Hopscotch?
They do a weird dance.
God, I've never seen that in my entire life. That is... You know what? Targaryens are incredibly pale, so that must be the antithesis of white people dancing.
Yeah, I don't... They literally just jump back and forth next to each other there.
Yeah. But what I do like is, like, as we kind of, like, go back, we see everyone... Maybe not everyone, but at least the adults genuinely having, like, a good time. We see, like, we see Rhaenyra laughing with Daemon. We see Otto, like, clapping, smiling. Alicent's laughing next to him. It really is nice, and it gives you, like, false hope. Like, false in that you know this isn't going to be a happy ending.
Am I the only one that thought Otto's clapping was fucking weird as hell?
Right? It was, like, kind of that... like fingers on the palm.
He's definitely doing the weird fingers on the palm clap. But what is he clapping about?
Maybe the dancing?
Maybe?
Maybe the music?
Yeah, I don't know. Nobody else is clapping. He's the only one clapping.
Yeah. I also gotta say, how awkward is it to, like, being the only two people dancing?
Right? That's uncomfortable for sure.
Right? Like, you need, like, at least probably three groups, 6 people total, for it to not be awkward.
Yeah. Especially, like, if they were a couple, then you just say, fuck it. You're like, it's just us, who cares about anyone else?
Mm-hmm.
But, like, they're not even a couple. They're just cousins.
Right? Which, to be fair for Targaryens, might as well be a couple at that point. But you guys are betrothed to different cousins and a different brother. You're doing the wrong incest.
Yeah. Exactly.
But despite all this joy and happiness, Viserys reaches his limit.
Mm-hmm.
And he needs to be taken out. And with him goes any, like, happiness in the setting.
Yeah. But I would also like to point out that these servants think carrying their roast pig in is more important than the guards carrying Viserys out.
Like, yeah, we gotta go. We gotta get in and make sure this pig's in here.
Yeah, gotta get it in while it's hot.
Sorry, King. This pig's likely gonna last longer than you, so...
Yeah. And they said it right in front of Aemond.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm like, unfair. I want some of that.
Exactly.
You put that in the middle of the table. That is not in front of Aemond.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Aemond ordered it for himself.
Yeah, it's just for Aemond.
Now,
and then Aemond and
that's
the younger brother share some looks.
Yeah, like Lucerys looks and he laughs. And
is he like laughing like, haha, I cut your eye out, you dumb bitch?
Like, I think to a certain point, but meh. Like, I thought it had something to do with the pig, because the pig's laid there, and that...
Oh! Because fucking they did the pig prank on him.
Oh my
he's
god!
Laughing about the pig!
You're right! Because it looks like, from how he's looking, it looks like he's riding the pig.
Yeah, holy shit.
Okay.
Oh my god, that's good.
Okay. Good job, DJ fella.
Yeah, it was a team effort. You're the one who mentioned the pig being part of it.
Mm-hmm. But obviously, so Lucerys is laughing, and Aemon hits the table and gives his own toast. And, it's obviously, one of those backhanded things. Looking so...
I mean, backhanded isn't really...
It's just a straight up punch.
Yeah.
And strong. And he keeps poking the bear as well.
Yeah, like he says it, and his mom is like, Eamon, shut the fuck up. And, the bastards are like, I'll fucking punch you in the face, you 30-year-old man.
And he's like, what? It was a compliment. I was being nice to you. And to which, like, the fighting kind of gets started, and he just, like, punches Damon, who takes it like a... Sorry, Aemond. I'm getting those two mixed up. Who takes it like a champ. It's like, like... Then he, like, what? Like, it's like if it was a movie, he would, like, wipe the corner of his mouth, like, try again. And Aegon...
Which, I mean, it's what you'd expect between a fight of, like, a 16-year-old boy and a 30-year-old man.
Mm-hmm. And Aegon just manhandles Lucerys, grabbing him and slamming him into the table.
Yeah. Which, that one's, like, worse, in my opinion. Like...
Right?
Like, Aemond, the older brother just freaking manhandling the younger brother. This is rude.
Yeah, and something that wasn't, like, done well, I feel like it's just Aemond, like, shoves Jacaerys, and he just falls over. Like, there's pathetic, and then there's that.
Yeah, but I think they're trying to be like, look at Aemond. He's such a badass.
Yeah. Maybe, but...
He's gonna fight Daemon one of these days.
Mm-hmm. And then he, drops his other line like, what? I was just showing how proud I am of my family. Apparently, they're not proud of theirs.
Yeah.
To which Daemon steps in between them and goes like, no, stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got them, the eyes lock. Now, I have to be honest, a part of me feels like Daemon kind of respects Aemon a bit. I don't know. There's like this amused look he's giving him.
Yeah. I would say he absolutely, like I said earlier, he respects Daemon as a warrior.
No, I'm talking about Daemon respecting Aemon.
Oh. I could also see that.
You know what? I think it's all like... I think, honestly, Daemon might see a little bit of himself in Aemond.
Yeah. They are very similar.
Both incredibly assholes.
Yeah.
And then...
I gotta say, the fact that they also have the same name.
Minus one letter.
Yeah. No, the letters just moved. They just took the D and put it on the end.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
But with the princess like being dragged out like criminals and whatnot, Alicent and Rhaenyra have a bit of a moment, and
in this moment, it almost seems like Alicent is legitimately like willing to make amends with Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Like, I get that the whole King's Speech happened and all that. Like, I have to assume that Alicent is just playing the long con here. Like she has some sort of scheme for why she wants Rhaenyra to come back to King's Landing.
I would hope. But I think...
Yeah, at this point, this seems completely out of character for her, regardless of Viserys' speech and toasts happening.
I agree, and that's what I thought, but I feel like, the last scene kind of pretty much confirms that, nah, she really was willing to let everything go.
Yeah, I guess I could see the last scene kind of confirming that.
Mm-hmm. But, so now with the next one, though, we get a person walking in a crime hood, and I thought it was Daemon. I swear to God, I thought it was Daemon, because that's what he wears whenever he commits crime.
It's just the universal crime attire.
Yep. But then we see drawing a blank on her name, but the White Worm.
Yeah.
And she's obviously doing pretty good for herself. Her whorehouse is a lot nicer now.
Yeah, and she hasn't aged a day.
No, I mean, they made her Asian. Asians just don't age. They're either 10 or 100.
I knew with 100% confidence that you were going to say that.
I mean, it's true. But no, it's actually not Daemon, which I want to say, seeing her, the White Worm, made me even more certain it was Damon.
Yeah.
But no, it's, I believe, like, just one of the handmaidens in the the servers for the whole kind of situation. I think that's the woman who gave Alicent the abortion tea.
Yeah. I think so as well.
Mm-hmm. And so she's an informant, obviously relaying this information. And now we get to the worst scene in the episode!
Which they helpfully saved for last.
Yeah. So my issues with this, I think, are the same as yours. First off, it's prophecy related, which nobody's a fan of at all. Mm-hmm. And second, right. It seems way too convenient.
So convenient.
Especially since it seems like they're showing this as her misinterpreting being a key motivation for the inevitable civil war happening.
Yeah, and they really didn't need it. Like, Alicent was already, like, headstrong on that path. So, like, this weird mini arc they give her between Viserys' speech and the end of this scene makes no sense to me.
Yeah, they needed to end this episode, like, 1 minute sooner. And then it would be perfect.
Well, or completely cut this scene. Or swap this scene for a different scene of Viserys dying. And then also, I think, change up that Alicent talking with Rhaenyra at the end of the feast.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm okay with that, because you can just later say, like, yeah, she was lying through her teeth.
Yeah, you could just be like, yeah, she's scheming something, for sure.
Because I'm fine with that scene. It's just with this final scene that makes that scene looking back like, that was pretty genuine then. Otherwise, why have this at all?
Yeah. Yeah, and like, what is Alicent supposed to be gleaning from this nonsense that Viserys is speaking? Like, from her perspective, this is clearly the ramblings of a delusional old man.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how you look at it. There's no reason for her to think that he's, like, putting all his faith in her to unite the realm. And you know what? Even if he was, the best way to do that would still be to make up with Rhaenyra.
Mm-hmm. Because obviously, not uniting with Rhaenyra doesn't unite the realm. Kind of splits it.
Right. Kind of the opposite of uniting.
So, yeah, this is a stinker of a scene. But, like I said, maybe we can ignore it and pretend like it doesn't exist. Whereas other bad scenes we can't really ignore.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, we could just say that the weird little mini arc that Alicent went on at the end of this episode, like, it didn't move her as a character. It regressed her briefly and then brought her back to where she was.
Yeah, all in the span of, like, 3 minutes.
Yeah, so we could just be like, it never happened. I'll just cut this scene out on rewatch.
It's not canon. But then we get to see Viserys' last breath, and thus comes the end of Viserys Targaryen.
And he says, what does he say? He says, "My love," right before he dies.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's just seeing his wife, his former wife.
Oh, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And this is actually something I missed, but remember in the previous episode, he apparently, and I'll have to double check on this, but as he is kind of retiring from the funeral feast, he pretty much says, "I'm going to bed Emma," which is his former wife's name, to Alicent. So they were already kind of hinting at that.
He does.
Mm-hmm.
Does say that. Yeah, how did we not catch that?
Well, you and I aren't the sharpest knives in the drawer, but we figured out the pig joke, so
We figured out the pig joke.
But that's the last scene of the episode. So, after going through it with you, I think I still stand by that this is my favorite episode of the season so far. And if the rest of the season can keep, or even like all the seasons can bare minimum keep this quality, I will thoroughly enjoy it all. But it's gotta stay at this quality. Can't go down from here.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Like, this episode was definitely good.
Alrighty. Any kind of last things you want to touch upon before we call it here?
I think I'm good.
Alrighty. As always, DJ Fella, thank you very much for joining me and discussing today's episode. And everyone listening, be safe, and I hope you all have a wonderful night.